fellow travelers, and welcome to Versus Stars podcast. How my loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. And remember, click the subscribe button, everybody. It's an amazing episode because Brandon Thomas boards the mothership. He's the writer of Kill Wolfhead from Humanoids. Now come on board as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Thomas. Thank you so much for coming to Versus Stars podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's totally my pleasure. So I always start with the question of inspiration. So what inspired your love of comics and who are your earliest influences?
Well, I basically came into the game in the spring of 1992. My father, who was a big comics collector back when he was a kid, he had all of the originals. You know, your Amazing Spider-Man, Uncanny X-Men. He didn't keep or maintain any of those. So I think he was always very regretful about that. And so he wanted to basically, I guess, give me an opportunity to do a little better with that. So I mean, I had some comics here and there. I don't know if anyone remembers, but when the Batman movie came out in '89, they had a Batman cereal. And if you sent in I think it was like 3 box tops or something, then they sent up this little ash can. I think it was like the Untold Legend of the Batman or something. It was like this little cool 3-issue condensed origin story that I think that Len Wein wrote. But I had that, and then anytime he would have to go into the city for like anything jury duty or something, he would always bring back some comics from the newsstand.
Yeah.
But in the spring of 1992, for some reason, probably because I was obsessed with, cartoons and stuff at the time, he decided that this was the time to take me to my first dedicated comic shop. And it was a place called the Fiction House. And I came inside, and it was just basically like, buy whatever you want.
Yeah.
So every month we would make a trip to the store, and we'd always walk out with kind of 2 stacks. There would be like my stack of books, and there would be his stack of books that I would be like, I don't want to read the Flash. I would read it, obviously, but for me, the biggest thing was Image Comics. One of the first comics that I walked out of the Fiction House with that first time was Spawn #1. I had to go hunting, to several different comic shops to find Youngblood one that I think had released maybe a month prior to that. So that was really those were basically my formative years. So the Image launch. Another big thing for me was the introduction of Tim Drake as the new Robin, because coming in, I was looking for new characters. Like, I was looking for new characters that I could kind of latch onto. And one of the issues that I came away from that first trip with was it was the second Tim Drake based miniseries. It was Robin 2, Joker's Wild. It was issue 3. It had like the Joker hologram, like on the cover. So after that, then I made it my mission to find like all of Tim Drake's first appearances, like the first time him and Batman go out on patrol for the first time. So those were kind of the 2 things, like the Image launch and the introduction of Tim Drake. And those were kind of like my 2 kind of pillars that really kind of dictated how my entry into the wide world of comics kind of went. So that's me. So I am a 90s kid. I have a soft spot for hologram color, hologram colors, die cuts, all of that stuff. Like, I bought the trading cards that Joe Jusko did. I bought like an entire box of those cards so that I could assemble a perfect set. And so that was basically me. So I definitely came into the game during those crazy times. And I still have I know that a lot of people don't like that age, and it was not very writer driven, which is funny to me. But when I came in as like a 12-year-old, it it was so exciting. Like all of those characters, Spawn and Youngblood and Cyber Force and Wetworks. I mean, all of that stuff. It was just, it was amazing to me. So that really kind of formed the foundation of my relationship with comics.
I think we're about the same age because my story is not so different. I mean, my
Okay.
father was a first generation comic book fan. He
Yeah.
had Ming Spider #1, Uncanny, Daredevil. Like
Yeah.
those, he didn't throw them away, so he still has them. And I'm like,
Okay.
and I so
Good. Good
I
for
got
him.
I've got to hold them and read them, so it's kind of exciting. And he got me into comic books right around the 1989 Batman movie. It was when I started getting
Okay.
into it.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I still remember my first comic books were Batman Year 3, the first Tim Drake appearances, and then
Okay.
A Lonely Place of Dying that came right after it
Oh,
with Tim Drake. Yeah, so I'm a
yeah.
big
I was hunting for back issues like a couple of
uh,
years later, finding those books.
see, I'm a big Tim Drake fan. So I bought I have the miniseries.
Oh yeah.
I started buying his original series that I think it was Chuck Dixon wrote them.
Yeah,
The
Chuck Dixon
ongoing.
wrote most of it for the first, I don't know, like decade or so.
Yeah.
Even when he was when Tim Drake started appearing like in Detective Comics, like I think Chuck wrote a lot
Hmm.
of those initial issues.
Yeah, and and I bought Image. I was a huge Extreme Studios fan.
Oh,
Like
yes.
I remember I had
Brigade.
yes, but my that was my favorite series of all time. Was for a long time. Brigade was like my favorite. For didn't stay that way,
Uh-huh.
but for a while when it first came out, that was like my thing. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
And I bought my first Image comic was Youngblood #3, the one with a
Okay.
Shaft on the cover, and he's like the way the face of the sword is like coming like right up towards his over his face like that.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and I
Uh-huh.
remember thinking when I came, I saw, I was like, I don't know, something felt like almost dangerous about the cover. I was like, oh, I don't know if I should be even, reading this. I don't know if I should even own it. It's definitely going to be, too graphic and violent. I don't know if I should be doing this, but I can't stop myself. I'm going to read this. Yeah, that was that kind of feeling
Yeah.
about it. And then I bought the story that always stuck with me were the three event books: Extreme Prejudice with
Oh yeah.
Quantum, and then Extreme Sacrifice with Crypt and Prophet and Lord Chapel.
Yes.
I still have them on my wall. I've read them so many times. And then Extreme Destroyer that came right after. It's like I said, I
Stephen
was
Platt,
big.
man.
Oh my
Stephen
god, that
Oh
guy
my
is
God, you talk
amazing.
about artists that I was completely obsessed with when they debuted. I mean, I was just so when Rob, when Rob Liefeld like got him,
Yeah.
because everybody was after him because he did those issues of Moon Knight. I think were the
Hmm.
first time most people had seen his work. He did some Moon Knight, and Rob Liefeld got him and put him on Prophet
Yeah.
almost immediately. He started doing like a couple of covers before he took over interiors, and it was just like it was
Yes.
head splitting. Like, this is so cool. So yeah,
I
I
still remember.
definitely.
I still remember the ads on the back of Brigade. Profit
Uh-huh.
goes splat. And I was like,
Yep.
and I still
Yep.
remember that image and the word goes splat. And I stuck in my memory so long. I was like, it's weird how some things just like are ingrained in your brain. And that cover
Yeah.
of, I think it's probably like hanging somewhere, and then you see like the guy in the
Yeah.
front,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the
Uh-huh.
splat, the first like splat cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that, and that stuck with me for a long time. I love those Extreme Sacrifice
Uh-huh.
Brigade and Bloodstrike. I mean, they were just the greatest
Yeah. It
things at the
was
time.
insane. Insane.
I mean, like I said, I know Rob Liefeld gets some grief, but his there's so much energy in his art. I mean, you can like it or hate it. Some people do, but you can't
Mhm.
deny the amount of energy he has in those images. And those were such memorable looking covers and interiors and stuff like that.
Yeah, Rob Liefeld gave me my first check as a
Oh
comic
wow.
writer. Yeah, back in 2003. Wow, so long ago. But yeah, so it was when I was 12 years old and I was, tearing up the world trying to find, Youngblood #1. I could have never imagined that.
Oh my god.
But far, far into the future, Rob would be like the first person who would actually, give me a check to write comics. So
He
it's pretty crazy. It's been a pretty amazing journey.
he is one of those like interview goals that I have that I like one day I definitely want to like get him on the show to just like embarrass him talking about how great Extreme
Mhm.
Extreme Studios were for such a long time. And yeah, it does fantastic. For me it was
He's great. He's a lot of fun. He knows everybody in comic.
so one of the books that you're working on, you're now the writer of Kill Wolfhead from Humanoids. So how do you
Yes.
get involved with the project, and how familiar were you with the Incal universe and the works of Jodorowsky? Is it Jodorowsky?
Yeah, and
and
Mobius, of
Mobius.
course. Yes, the fantastic, magnificent Mobius.
Yes.
Well, they the editor of the project, Rob Levin, contacted me. I was doing a lot of stuff for DC at the time, and
Yep.
he was a former DC editor. Where I think we had never actually worked together at DC, but I had worked with a lot of people that he, kind of either they were kind of assistants to him or
Mm.
just colleagues. So he got some, so he got some pretty good recommendations, and they were looking for writers to really kind of expand the Inkle universe. And I got invited, and he's like, obviously, I had the Inkle, I've read the Inkle several times, and he's like, give it another good read, and we'll talk again, and you can tell me like what characters and kind of setups about it, interest you. And so I'm rereading it, and I think Kill Wolfhead might be in the first 10 pages of the book, but there was just something, he immediately jumped out at me. Like the first time I saw him, I was like what a like just a completely ridiculous looking character, and his history was ridiculous. And I think John like shoots like a bullet through his ear, and so now he has like this hole through his ear forever. And it was just really, he was a really kind of very distinctive, unique character in that universe that was very it's very sci-fi, it's very like fantastical. And Kill Wolfhead, I mean, first of all, his name is just fucking fantastic. I mean, you just couldn't, you just can't get past, like, his name is Kill? Like, that can't be true. And then he just makes these kind of like spot appearances in the main book, and then in the follow-ups like Final Inkle and stuff. And every time you saw him, he felt like a completely different character.
Mm.
Like, if one time you see him, he's like in a brothel, and then another time you see him, he's like a general. And I was just trying to kind of reconcile like all of these different appearances of the character throughout these stories.
Mm.
And it just kind of immediately just put itself together. Like, this is the same character, he's lived all of these different lives, all of these different personas, he's done all of these different things. And that's kind of how it started. And when I got back in contact with Humanoids, I'm just like, I want Kill Wolfhead. And they're like, are you sure? I was like, yes, absolutely. So we went from there, and I just really, my goal was to, I wanted to write a book that felt like it wasn't written by me, like,
Mm.
at all. Like, I wanted to really kind of abandon kind of like all of my kind of tricks and habits and kind of like narrative quirks. And really, I wanted people who were close to me to read this book and it's like, Brandon wrote this? Really? And there's just, it's kind of, it's funny, it's profane, there's a lot of kind of like I don't know, it's just really, it's really a project that I was enormously proud of to do it.
Mm.
And it was one of those situations where I really was trying to go out there and do something a lot different from everything that I had ever done. And it was very freeing. It was,
Mm.
just like creatively liberating, because I usually do a lot of I don't want to say I do a lot of political work, because that's not it. But I always I'm trying to like find kind of like the underused, undervalued, mostly minority characters and kind of
Mm.
the big universes, and kind of kind of put them in better, better positions kind of going forward. And this was just an opportunity where I could really just cut loose. And there's a lot of kind of like hard cuts between scenes, and there's it's like a lot more kind of text and dialogue than I
Mm.
typically write, because that's one of the things I remembered about the original Inkle, and a lot of the Humanoids books, actually, they're very dense. you
Mm.
know, like very kind of narratively, and just even from like a text standpoint, like you look at a page, the Inkle, and it's just like boxes just like everywhere. So I really wanted to kind of embrace that and try to figure out how, like, you know, all these chapters are kind of 22, 24 pages, but I wanted it to feel like it was like 32 pages like crammed into this
Mm.
small space. And it was it was a really fantastic experience, and it's been great to get versions of the book in like all of these different languages. Like every
Mm.
6 months I get like another edition of it. And it's funny, it's finally coming out in English, but I've had like the French you know, editions for like almost a year now. So it's very like strange and cool to me. Like I've never had a book come out in another language first. And
Mm.
it's been a really cool and rewarding experience. And I got to work with Pete Woods, and
Mm.
that was just, you know, absolutely amazing. I've been a big fan of his since, you know, I always embarrass him when I talk about how long I've been, you know, how long I've been reading comics with his art in it. But
Mm.
you know, like I said before, I'm a huge Tim Drake fan. So this probably wasn't the first time I had seen his artwork, but he did draw an arc of Robin. I think he
Mm.
started maybe in like issue 71. It was
Mm.
like this thing where like Tim Drake like goes to like a university, and I can't remember if like Batman sent him there undercover, but there's some kind of strange kind of
Mm.
mystery or something that he has to kind of unravel. And that was one of the first times I had ever seen Pete Woods' artwork, and I'm just like, this guy's amazing. And so I never could have imagined that, you know, I don't know, over a decade later or something. It might not be that long. You know, now he'll really get upset with me. But
Now, the interesting with Kill Wolfhead, right? A couple of things.
yeah,
Um, if I had the pleasure of reading it, it's a very weird book.
yeah.
So when you're trying to buy an author to buy into the concept, how did
Uh-huh.
you kind of pitch it so it kind of like made sense and you could buy into it?
I think I pitched it basically as a story of a I don't know. See, I didn't abandon all of my narrative ticks. One of them is, you know, like bad dads. So that was really kind of the plug in into the
Okay.
pitch, where, you know, he has been very kind of reckless in that way throughout his long varied life, and he's left behind a lot of, you know, illegitimate children that feel a certain way about him, and he gets into a situation where he needs their help. So it's basically the story of these kind of, you know, five unwanted children that have to come together and decide whether or not to save, you know, their father, who essentially abandoned them. And, you know, and all of the kids are, you know, are really different. I mean, one is like a robot,
Mm-hmm.
you know, one is a ghost. And there was another just, you know, ridiculous thing where this just kind of concept that like Kill Wolfhead can reproduce with basically any any being that
Right, because
exists.
there's a pregnant robot in this. I was like, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah, it's Kill Wolfhead. That's how it happened. Like, that was essentially, you know, the pitch, that this is, you know, this is a man that can literally get anything pregnant. And so he has done that, and he has left a lot of kind of wreckage and regret in his wake. And that's really how I pitched it, the story of these kind of lost children having to decide whether or not to save their father, who they all have very different. They're all kind of like on a spectrum. Like some of them are, you know, a chance of, you know, of redemption. There's a chance that, you know, they could have some kind of relationship with
Mm.
him again in the future. And there are others that are just like, no, I'm not here for this. I'm, you know, I'm here to get something very specific from him, but I'm not here to save him. I'm
Mm.
not here to absolve him. So that's essentially how I pitched it. But it is a very strange book. You know, a lot of it takes place inside of Kill Wolfhead's kind
Mm.
of damaged brain and psyche. So the children get to experience some of his kind of antics from his perspective, and
Mm.
see some of the kind of regrets and the memories and the thoughts he is like kind of carrying and hiding from himself about how he really feels about all of these, you know, children that he's left behind. So it was a pretty just cool experience, you
Well,
know.
I mean, I think that's what makes it a great story. Is that
Mhm.
me? uh, in my opinion, like in the surface, there is all that weirdness and humor and all this other stuff, but the kernel of what's inside is actually a fantastic metaphor for I think every child who's had a missing father. You know,
Yeah,
and what do you want from that father? Do you want an apology? Do you want an explanation? Do you
right.
want just what you feel is owed to you because of you didn't get what whatever inheritance or whatever that you felt you deserved as being part of that
Mhm.
family? And I mean, it felt like those all really real emotions that kids have about fathers who abandon them or run away. And
Right.
I think that, and to me anyway, that kernel of reality is what makes everything else more feels grounded. And I was wondering if that's what you were going for.
Yeah, I was going for that. I knew that emotionally it had to exist in something that was very easy to grab onto,
Hmm.
to kind of keep you kind of steady as you kind of go through all of these kind of strange dreamscapes
Yeah.
and twists and turns. So that's really at the core of the story, like that's really what it's about. It's
Hmm.
about, and like I said, all of the children are on different levels of kind of what they want from
Yeah.
him, or what they believe they're deserved from him. And the story is essentially them kind of reconciling with that, and also, realizing that they have siblings.
Yeah.
They have siblings that they have never met before, they have only just met. So the relationship between the siblings comes to be even, maybe even more important than their own relationship with their estranged father.
Hmm.
So we definitely wanted to kind of root the story in something that was very real and very emotional, for all of the, talking shit and all of the, kind of ridiculousness that happens throughout the story. It's rooted in that.
Now, obviously the Incal universe is a expanded universe.
Mhm.
How for how much of your story is necessary? Or do you need to be a fan of Incal universe to fully understand it? And how much was it? Are there like Easter eggs there for those who do already are immersed in that universe? Does that makes sense?
Yeah, I think, to me, I basically treated, because in the the original stories, Kill Wolfhead to me always felt like an Easter egg. He always felt kind of like an extra thing that just would kind of appear and then disappear, and every time you would see him, he would be completely different.
Yeah.
So Kill himself is kind of the Easter egg in this story.
Okay.
It's really, you don't need to be like 100%, you know, versed in the universe to kind of plug into the story. But I think for people that are familiar with it, that have seen this character in the background and wonder, like, what's up with this guy? Like, who is this Wolfhead guy, and why is he named Kill? I think that it'll be a pretty cool experience to kind of see, kind of like between the panels. Like, these are the, like, when when he shows up in Inkle and then disappears for,
Hmm.
4 or 5 issues. This is basically kind of like, these are the things he was up to, like in the interim, like in the in between. So that's kind of how we treated it.
Now, one interesting aspect as well is that once again, you're in most of the story is in the mind of Kill Wolfhead.
Mhm.
And the children are kind of like riding his mind and trying to explore different aspects of his brain to
Uh-huh.
depending on the motivation of the character.
Uh-huh.
Now, there's a question, sort of parts of the story, like giving too much away, where there seems to be some level of remorse in Kill Wolfhead for his role in these children's lives, for the
Yeah.
negative role in the children's lives.
Yeah.
So the question I wonder if you're part of the exploring too is is it just, if he is remorseful in his mind, does that mean he would be remorseful in reality, or is that just part
That
of
that
the
is
subconscious that is just there, that is
I think
immovable?
I think his regret is real.
Okay.
I think, and one of the things that, that I hope kind of comes through, is a sense where he is kind of overwhelmed by how much of a fuck up he is. So it's one thing for him to kind of hold these regrets and this
Mm.
remorse, but there is a big question of would he have ever acted on those, those feelings,
Right.
those hangups without this situation. I think that in large part the story is it's a catalyst for him to be able to kind of maybe get the result of that he wanted, but not to have to do all of the work to get
Mm.
it. So there's a part of it where, these kids, these very specific kids, leave this experience with a slightly different perspective, of their father. Now, does that in some way kind of let him off the hook because he didn't actually have to go out and
Mm.
take direct action, and he didn't have to tell them, this is really messed up. I'm sorry I did this. I think about this all the time. I wish I had made different choices,
Mm.
but now I feel that there's too much, there's too much that has been stacked up, and there's no way that I can ever undo all of this damage. So it's a big question, in the book, but the regret is real. Whether or not he would have ever acted on those feelings, like in the kind of responsible way, like the way he should have,
Yeah.
I think that is a question that we deliberately didn't answer, and that'll be up to the reader to decide if his remorse, if he would have ever acted on it, or if he had never gotten into this situation, if he would have just carried on this kind of lifetime of regret and never took real action to reconcile or repair any of the damage, the wreckage that he left behind.
Well, I mean, of course, the other question then obviously is, would the children have been better off if he had stayed? And how much of that is a question? Because once again, when people read the story, there's definitely instances and very clear indications that he's not necessarily the best person.
Right.
He's self-absorbed. He's more interested in winning a contest that you will figure out the contest is actually about for those we don't want to spoil it for you. But if he had stayed in their lives, would they necessarily have been better off for it?
Maybe. I mean, a bigger question is if he had stayed in the life of his first child, would the rest of them even exist? So
Mm.
I just really wanted to make it something that was very that was left up to interpretation,
Mm.
because he is not he is not a great person. So the standing question is, if he had stayed, would he have become a better person? Would he have become more mature? Would he have become less reckless? Would he have, made it his life's mission to win like the world's best lover
Right.
contest every year? So, I think it's that's one of the things we definitely wanted to do, to really kind of show just the complexity of
Mm.
this character, and how he's essentially a mess. He's a mess because
Right.
to me, just reading the original story and his appearances, it's like, why does he have a different persona like every time we see him? Like what is going on with this guy? So it's a guy that, he can't sit still, he can't make, strong commitments to anything. Every time you see him, he should feel like a completely different person. And so,
Right.
that's kind of what we were going for. But it's a very open question if he had stayed, or if he had, maybe he made a mistake the first time. If he had stayed with the second one, then what would have happened? But
And
that's a little less interesting than what actually happens. But
well, one other thing, the question as well is the way the story is set up. In many ways, it's hard to pinpoint who your hero is.
okay.
Kill Wolfhead is not necessarily your hero. Anna has a very specific reason why she's there. In your opinion, which character in your is the hero of your story, is of that story in that sense? Like,
I
which
would
one is
say
the most pure motivation in your opinion?
I would say probably Anna.
Okay.
I would probably say that she is there is there's kind of like there is a potential in her that we wanted to really carry through, and we really kind of wanted to put her on the seesaw where she could very easily be the character that will never forgive her father for what he's done and has just absolutely no patience and no she's just not receptive to
Right.
hearing like his explanations or his excuses.
Right.
Now, without giving too much away, there's something that happens that gives her an additional context, and I really wanted it to feel when we meet her in the story, she really has the perspective of a child.
Mm.
She really has the perspective of, you know, this was something that I wanted, this
Mm.
was something that I missed out on, this was something that I deserved,
Mm.
and I want to, I want to get something from this. Like
Mm.
she needed to get something from this experience. But
Mm.
once she learns that there are things about her past and things about her memories that are not true and
Mm.
things that have been withheld from her, then it gives her kind of a greater context and makes it possible for her to want to reconcile with her
Mm.
father someday. So I feel like, to me, she was the one that felt the most she's the one that changes the most. Like she's the one that's the most flexible
Mm.
out of the group of what we called children, and how she has, in certain ways, she has manipulated and kind of misled her siblings
Mm.
into helping her get this thing that she wants, or helping her get this resolution that she believes she deserves. And she learns that not everything she believed as a child was correct, and there are
Mm.
things about her father that obviously don't absolve him or don't excuse him, but put a little additional context on the things that she was so sure that she knew, and
Mm.
so sure, were correct and were righteous. So I would say that Anna is definitely probably the one who is the kind of POV character, I think, that kind of takes us
Mm.
through the whole thing and changes the most, and suffers the worst consequence.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. When I hero, I think I meant more like the pure sense of like the good, like the good guy, because she does has a
Oh, I
very
mean,
see that's what I'm saying. Because Wolfhead certainly is not your hero.
yeah. I mean, the good
Anna.
guys probably Stan. I
Okay,
mean,
see that's what I'm saying about hero. I mean, like I said, I think protagonist. I agree 100% Anna, but I was gonna say
mm,
based on what the twist later, she's not necessarily a hero as much as she's your
right,
protagonist. And
right.
so I'm thinking of like which character is like the good guy of the story.
I mean, probably Stanley. I mean, Stanley is the one who is ready to reconcile from the beginning. Like he is the one of the group that is already receptive. Like he's already ready to hear. Like, tell me why this happened. Tell me why you made this decision.
Right,
Like make it make sense.
right.
Essentially. And so, I mean, that's definitely Stanley, because Stanley is already there. The rest of them are not there and have to kind of get a little closer
Mm.
to that point, and they have to get to this point where they realize that their father took so many things away from them, and so much time and thought and kind of like emotional kind of like heft away from them,
Mm.
but they've kind of accidentally gained something in the process that they can kind of take forward and use to kind of better themselves. So
Yeah, and I thought the part was kind of interesting, like all the children, because I do like the phrase the children.
yeah, the children.
The
Yeah.
children is the idea is at least what they're willing to verbalize is that they say they're doing it for their mothers who got abandoned, but in reality they're really doing it for themselves, right? Or is that something they are they aware they're doing it mostly for their own reasons, or is that
Um,
something they're just telling themselves they're doing it for their mothers?
I think it's just kind of on a spectrum. I
Okay.
think that some of them want kind of justice, for their mothers, and they saw the kind of the damage and the emotional toil it took on their mothers when, Kill just abandoned them. So I think that a lot of the story itself is about kind of like the lies and the stories we tell to ourselves and to each other. And so I think there are some of them that are genuinely there kind of like on the behalf of their mother or their mother's honor. But I think that the damage affected them both, so it's really hard to separate, am I here for myself, or am I here, for my mother, or am I here because of what was done to us together, or there may be kind of damage that is in their relationship, the relationship with their mothers. They may feel that those relationships were essentially compromised by Kill, because they were kind of this constant reminder to their mothers of, of how they were kind of mistreated and misled and just, abandoned at the drop of a hat. So I think it's very it's very interesting, and it differs for every character about why there's the reasons that they're there and the reasons that they're telling themselves they're there, and sometimes that is not that doesn't kind of it doesn't match up, just like Kill's justifications and this kind of lifetime of remorse that he's secretly carrying around doesn't it doesn't do the job. It doesn't fix anything. So
Now, and you're creating in creating the children, which again, love the term. When you're conceiving them, obviously, regardless of Kill Wolfhead's role in their lives, genetically they're all part of him. So
yes.
how much of him did you conceive as into the children?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say that, or they would say that not a lot. I mean, I think that they would consider themselves to have been essentially like raised by single mothers. So I really wanted them to kind of, one of their problems, they're really kind of disavowing like any place that he has in their lives. But there is, when you read the story, especially in the case of Anna and even, Freeland, there is a streak of kind of recklessness and kind of self-righteousness that they will often display, that is very much a part of their father. And I think that's definitely there, that you can see some of this. They don't lack, they don't lack the ability to commit to something, because this kind of quest that Anna is on is clearly something that has took a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of thought. But I think that there is kind of a a selfishness and a recklessness that their father displays all the time, that they also display. And you can really see it in Anna without giving too much away. There is a part of Anna that Anna uses people sometimes, just like her father did. So I would say that the two of them are probably the closest, kind of like in general. But she would swear that is not the case at all. But you can see it's there. Some of the things that she does are like, I don't know about that. I might have taken this a little too far. But
now, another thing that important in the story is the world building that you did. There's a lot of different worlds that you created, and how did you go about making sure that all these various worlds, like the robot world and all that, and making sure that it was logically coherent within its universe? Like, what was your approach to that?
Yeah, I was really trying to to me, one of the things about the original Inkle is the world building,
Mm,
and you never know what's going to happen next. You never know what environment that you're going to encounter next, and I was really just trying to I mean, I wanted to keep I wanted to keep Pete's interest. And I know that Pete is one of those artists that can draw anything. And so I knew that anything that I threw at him, he would be able to, to
mm,
execute perfectly and make it all feel real and make it all feel kind of lived in and really kind of well thought out when in actuality, it really started out with the kids. It really started out with like, okay, one of them's a robot, one of them's a ghost, one of them is, like a little kind of like short guy. Like that's kind of how it started. So it started out with the character, and then it was what kind of world did this character grow up in, like as a child? And one of, like you said, one of the biggest things is the robot world. Like it was so, that was one of my favorite scripts that I have ever done. Like creating that world was so much fun, and doing all of these just insane things where he like crash lands on the world and then he gets arrested, and then like one of the cops, one of like the robot cops is like immediately drawn to him, and then they're like making out like in the jail set, and it's just like just ridiculous things. And that was just kind of my goal, to really just kind of let loose and just like, well, what if this happened next, and what if this happened, and what if there was a jetpack, like what if like his rivals for this stupid award that he's trying to win, every year, basically like honeypot him to try to take him out of the running. And so just ridiculous things like that. And then I'm not going to say anything, just, the guy who's half salamander. And so,
yeah, yeah. Now, the one thing, like I said, I think the part that really fascinated me the most, and I've hit on it a few times. I'm going to keep hitting on it. The
uh,
robot world.
yeah.
Um, I just feel like there's so much there.
Uh,
Like you kind of want to dive further into that
oh,
world
yeah. No.
because the idea of the robot and when she gets pregnant and how that all kind of plays out, and you kind of imply that the impact on the society that occurs in is immense.
Yes.
And I just was fascinated, like how far ahead did you conceive of what those repercussions would be?
I mean, I really, I try not to go too far because I knew that I had a very limited amount of time. So it was very important. Like that was a very specific world and a very specific character that kind of demanded the focus almost of an entire issue.
Mm,
But I knew that I couldn't do that with everyone. So I had to pick one. I had to pick which, kind of like which lost child should we invest like an entire kind of issue and really see his history like back to front through his life. And the Pete's design for that character was just so just berserk that it was just instantly, it was like, this is the guy. Like this
yeah,
is the one where we have to spend an entire issue like in his world, and we can see his mother. And and like you said, it's just Kill Wolfhead can get anything pregnant, even a robot. And so that was just something that was just, it was just cool and funny and stupid. And it was like kind of like just enough of a combination of all three that it just felt fantastic. But I just knew that I knew I didn't have a lot of space. So I knew that I could only really dive that deeply
mm,
into him. And his design was so interesting, and the background was so interesting that he's the one that like, okay, it has to be him, because I'm never going to get this opportunity ever again to just do this ridiculous thing of like, this guy somehow gets like a robot pregnant. And then and it's just, so funny how, Kill Wolfhead can get anything pregnant, but none of the kids really look like him. Like all of the kids look like the mothers.
right, right, right,
So
right.
it was just one of those kind of ridiculous things. But I mean, I could spend, I could easily go back to that world and just, dive in forever and ever. But it just, it really felt based on the design and the role that that
Hmm.
specific character played, that he was the one that kind of demanded that kind of, full focus, where everyone else is just kind of, they kind of touch touch on their origins, and you see
Hmm.
a little bit in the memories and stuff. But it was, to me, it felt like the Inkle. Like it felt like a world that made sense in that world. And that's just, that's one of the main things we were trying to do, because all of these characters, I don't know if anyone will go back to this world, but it was really cool um to see. Like, I have the hold on, I think I have the book here, like in the back of the book, there is kind of like there's like a timeline, like there's
Yeah.
a reading order. It's basically like the reading order of the Inkle universe. And it felt so cool to see Kill Wolfhead like in this like map of this kind of like fantastic universe that's had all of these, fantastic creators doing amazing work in it. So it was just, I was really, it's one of my proudest moments kind of as a comics writer. And I've never had a book that has been released in so many different languages, and every single book is like a different size and a different format. They're, like standard hardcovers or oversized hardcovers. It's been republished, I think, in Polish, and they published it in like a magazine, like an oversized like magazine version. So every single version of the book is in a different language, and it's like completely different from the one that came before it. And
Hmm.
essentially that was Kill Wolfhead, and that was the thing that drew me to the character in the first place, like the variety. And every time you saw him, he looked different, he had a different role, and it was just really, really cool to see.
So when are we getting the Robot World spinoff comic?
Ugh. Ask Humanoids. I would write that tomorrow. I mean, I would write the continuing adventures of the children like in a heartbeat. Like I developed a great, affinity for all of them, and it would be awesome to do a story about them that wasn't so kind of centered on their father, and kind of centered on trauma, because that's
Hmm.
kind of like at the heart of this story, like the trauma and the loss and the absence that all of these characters have felt from not having their father be a big part of their
Hmm.
lives. I mean, I write it in a heartbeat. I'll
So
start.
so
I'd start tomorrow.
so interview notes, I'll be like, Brandon Thomas announces spin-off comic
Right.
book of Robot World. And then I'll just send it over to Human. I was like, yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
letting you know it's out there now. You can't stop
Yeah.
it. It's
Uh-huh.
out.
I don't think that's gonna work out. There's a there have been many tricks that writers have tried to, continue their stories. I don't know if that one's gonna be super super successful, but I'll just put it out into the world, and we'll see what happens.
So what's next for you?
Well, one of the books that kind of one of the other books that I've worked on that people have really responded to is a book called Excellence, from Skybound and Image. It's like the story of a family of magicians that have been secretly helping the world. And it's kind of deals with kind of like an uprising, a crisis that occurs within this group. So there are 12 issues of that out already, and we have one last story arc to do, which we're working on now. Crossing fingers that maybe people will see at least the beginning of that next year. I have a couple of things I'm working on with DC that I can't talk about fully, the whole song
Yeah.
and dance. But yeah, that's mainly what I'm working on, doing some more stuff with DC, and finishing out Excellence, and just seeing what kind of opportunities are out there. hopefully more children, maybe. Hopefully.
Well, like I said, anytime come back on talk about all that stuff, especially when this Robot World spinoff comic book happens. Please let me know. Announce it within the next few weeks, obviously. But I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Same. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a really cool book, and I think when people dive in, they'll really like it. We tried to leave a lot there. It's one of those books where tried to create a book where every time you read it, you get a little something extra than you did the last time, or you notice something awesome that Pete hid in a background panel somewhere. So it's just it's a great experience, and so I'm really happy. Like I said, I'm really happy people can finally read it in English.
Well, hopefully our listeners check it out, and like I said, thank you so much. Listeners, check out Kill Wolfhead, and let's get the drums rolling on the spin-off story. So thank you so much.
All right, I'm ready. All right, take it easy. Peace.